Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to all. I, Mrs. Karishma Jain, faculty at the Department of Computer Science, on behalf of Chikitsak Samuhas, Sir Sitaram and Lady Shantabai Patkar College of Arts and Science, and Patkar-Varde College of Commerce and Economics, would like to welcome you all for RUSA sponsored 2 days international webinar Research in IT, IoT, where innovation meets reality. I would first like to give you a brief introduction about our college. Our college was established in 1964. The college has various aided and self financed courses at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, along with diploma and certification courses. We are an autonomous college affiliated to the University of Mumbai. Our college is also an ISO 9001 2015 certified and DBT Star Scheme awardee. We at the Department of Information Technology and Department of Computer Science conduct many workshops, seminars, conferences at university, state, national, and international level for students, teachers, industry professionals, and researchers. Our department is affiliated with the Computer Society of India, CSI, as an institutional member. Now, let me welcome the presence of our Honorable Chief Education Officer, Dr. Mala Kharkar, in charge Principal, Dr. Teresa Joseph. I would also like to note the presence of the Chief Coordinator, Mrs. Ruchita Dalvi, coordinators and co-coordinators and all the faculty members of the Department of Information Technology and Computer Science. Thank you very much to all the viewers viewing us live from across the globe. Now, let me brief you about the day one of the webinar. We had amongst us Professor Yogesh Pingle, the Deputy HOD and Assistant Professor in the Department of Computer Science, Engineering, Data Science of Vidyavardhini's College of Engineering and Technology. Sir delivered a wonderful session on IoT for music therapy. The participants were addressed about the implementation of IoT for relieving stress and also the importance of music and how we can implement it in our daily life to cope up with stress. Now, I would like to introduce you all to our today's speaker, Mr. Sachin Sadare. Mr. Sachin Sadare is a founder and director at Digital Dojo, Estonia. Sir is a digital marketing consultant, a corporate trainer, coach, and also a digital evangelist. He works with many businesses, corporate firms, and educational institutes to conduct trainings, conferences, and events related to the digital marketing. Sir is a keynote speaker, also an advisor at various national and international conferences. He is an adjunct professor for digital marketing and entrepreneurship at some top management schools. Sir, we are pleased to have you amongst us. May I now request Mr. Sachin Sadare to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Am I audible? Uh, can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Can you
Yes,
hear me,
sir.
ma'am? Yeah.
Yes, sir. You are completely audible.
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen. Just see if you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Is my screen visible? Yeah. Okay. So it's visible, right?
Uh, no, sir, not at my end. Maybe it would be taking few seconds to load. Not yet at my end. It's loading, and yes, sir, it's now completely visible.
Okay. So I'll
Yeah.
be switching off my cam so that I can speak, about the topic.
All right, sir.
Yeah. So good afternoon, friends, students, teachers, principal. Uh, as Miss Karishma said, that I do a lot of training and teaching. IoT is a subject that is very close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about IoT as a technology. When you think about IoT, there are two aspects to IoT. One is the technical aspect, what kind of protocols to use, what kind of sensors to use, and everything to do with the design and creation of the IoT application. And the other side of IoT is the business side of technology. So if a company is thinking about using IoT to make money, or to create a business use case, how does a company think about it? Okay. So technically, there are a lot of ways to do it. The most easiest way is to buy a Arduino or buy a Raspberry Pi and start working with it. And I'm sure Miss Professor Yogesh Pingle must have talked about it. I'm going to speak about the other aspect, which is the business side of Internet of Things. Okay. So to understand IoT, one thing that students or anybody who is an IoT enthusiast should understand is the SMAC stack. Now, what is SMAC? SMAC is an acronym. S stands for social, M stands for mobile, A stands for analytics, and C stands for cloud. Okay. I hope I'm audible. If I'm not audible, just let me know. Okay. Okay. So SMAC is a very important prerequisite to understanding Internet of Things. Uh, Madam, I have a question here. Is this interactive? If I ask a question, can participants respond to me? Hello? Okay. So SMAC is a very important prerequisite to understanding the Internet of Things. So what does SMAC contain? S is social. We are all aware of the social media. What social media can do for us. There is Facebook, there is Instagram, there is WhatsApp, YouTube. You are connected right now to YouTube. So there's a lot of things within social media, and you all are aware of that. So I'm not going to go into detail of social media. The M stands for mobile, and the mobile draws its power from the apps that we see now on our Android or Apple, or the iOS phones. Now apps is something that we are connected to through the mobile phone, and the company that gives us the app uses the app to send messages to us. So mobility is known as the last mile of delivery from a technology perspective. So any company that wants to send across a message to their users, customers, will use the app to reach the person. Analytics is conversion of information into insights. Okay. Um, just a minute. Anybody from Patkar College, I just want to check whether, this session is interactive or it's just going to be me talking. Anybody? Okay. So analytics is the conversion of information into insights. And when there is information,
Hello,
what we,
sir.
yeah.
Sorry for the interruption. Yes, sir. Your questions will be visible on the YouTube live session. We will be providing you the questions once the students ask over there. So it would be interactive. Whatever you ask, will make you available over here. We'll make the
Okay.
questions available here in the StreamYard.
So I need to type the question in the chat box, is
No,
what
no,
you're saying?
no, no, sir. No, sir. In the private chat, you will be able to see the questions
Okay.
whichever students are asking through the YouTube.
Okay. And if I want to ask questions,
So normally you can ask, students are able to hear you.
okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so When we look at analytics, okay, uh, the key thing about analytics is you have information, you need to process that information, and you need to draw insights, and using these insights you have to convert it into decisions. So if you are collecting any data, that data ultimately should help you in your decision making. So consider that there is a black box. At one end of the black box you're pushing information, on the other side of the black box you're drawing insights, and these insights are helping you make decisions. What do you think is there inside the black box? Any student wants to answer? What do you think, if there is a black box, on one end we are pushing information and on the other side we are getting insights, what is happening inside the black box? Any students wants to answer? Hello?
Sir,
Yeah.
uh, can we take the session? Can we take the questions at the end of the session?
Okay, so it's okay. Okay, no worries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
analytics is the conversion of data into insights. The last thing about the SMAC is the cloud. So we all are using cloud. When we are using Gmail, when we are using Facebook, when we are using any of these platforms, we are basically using the cloud platform. The biggest advantage of using the cloud platform is that our data is available to us whenever we want, wherever we want, whichever location. I may be in Mumbai, or I may be in Pune, or I may be in Europe, I may be in the US. Wherever I am, I have access to my Gmail, Facebook, or any of the cloud services that I'm using. And whichever device I want, whether it is the phone or the laptop, whichever device I use, I can have the data that is stored on the cloud. The other thing with cloud is I can scale up and I can scale down at a fraction of the cost. So today, if I have 15 GB on my Gmail and I want to move to 100 GB, I just need to go to Google. I need to pay the amount. Within a couple of minutes, I have access to 100 GB of data. So scaling up and scaling down is instantaneous on a cloud system. And these are all pay as you go models. So when you offer it, so when these offerings are made, I'm not owning anything. I'm just renting it. So tomorrow, if I'm paying for 100 GB, and then after a few months I realize that I don't really need 100 GB, I need only 15 GB, I can scale it down. So I'm paying only for that data that I'm actually going to be using. So these are some of the very critical advantages of having a cloud system. Now, when you look at this Mac, there are the four elements: social, mobile, analytics, and cloud. And they play a very important role in designing and developing IoT applications. The question is how? Okay. So, let me explain with an example. Let's assume that we are sitting in a conference room, and there is an admin of the conference room, and it is the responsibility of the admin to maintain the temperature of the room at, let's say, 25 degrees Celsius or 22 degrees Celsius. So what we are going to do is we are going to put temperature sensors at different places in the conference room. What these temperature sensors are going to do, they are going to collect information about the temperature at every periodic time, maybe every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. Let's say there are six such sensors and they are collecting information. So when sensors are collecting this information, they need to store the data. So where they will store the data, through a internet connection, they will push this data to a cloud system. In the cloud system, there will be some analytics modeling that will happen, and which will try to find out what is the average temperature of the conference room. If the average temperature is above or below 22 degrees Celsius, which is the result of the analysis, it will be conveyed to the admin of the conference room via the mobile app. So once the admin gets this data on the mobile app, the admin can take necessary action. He can actually go and increase or decrease the temperature, or he can use a thermostat, or he can forward it to some of his team members, and his team members can go and work with the temperature of the room. So see, in this particular case, there are some sensors that we have used. The sensors are actually generating data, okay? But just generation of data is not enough to design an IoT solution. If you want to design an IoT solution, you need to process this data. This data needs to be stored, which is the cloud. It needs to be analyzed, which is the analytics, and it needs to be communicated to the right stakeholders, whereas the mobility and the social comes into picture. So if you're generating an IoT solution, the entire smack is what is important to deliver a uh, IoT project. So the key takeaway here is the SMAC stack is an important prerequisite to understanding the Internet of Things. Now let's come to the key topic, which is Internet of Things. Now what do we mean by Internet of Things? Internet is present everywhere in the world, okay? Internet is basically two devices talking to each other, where each device has an IP address. So when each device has an IP address, that device is identified on the network, and one device can talk to another device, okay? Now this is what we mean by internet, where two devices can communicate with each other. If we have a mobile phone and our friend has a mobile phone, it's basically the two devices talking to each other, and we feel that we are talking to each other, okay? So internet is basically a connection between people to people, but it happens via devices which has an IP address. Then what is Internet of Things? Internet of Things is a technology where two things can talk to each other, okay? So if two things are talking to each other, these two things can be anything: my shirt talking to my trouser, or my watch talking to my specs, uh, my pen talking to my book. Anything can be talking to any other thing, the table talking to the chair. Now how is it that a certain thing can talk to another thing? It is the same concept. If a thing gets an IP address, that IP address is identified on the internet network, and the device with the IP address can talk to any other device with the IP address. This is how Internet of Things work. So if you want two things to talk to each other, you have to ensure that that thing gets an IP address. Let's come to the crux of Internet of Things. At the heart of IoT are sensors. If you're using sensors, you're working on an IoT project. If you're not using sensors, it is not an IoT project, okay? So sensors are at the heart of Internet of Things. There are two things that sensors do. Sensors will sense and they will communicate. So in the previous example of the conference room, we had put sensors in the room. Now let's assume that these sensors are sensing the temperature of the room. But if they just sense, but they don't communicate this data to some other place, that sensing is of no use. So these sensors need to sense the data as well as communicate the data to a certain system, which the system then takes in this data and works on it, analyzes it, and comes up with insights. That's what we saw in the previous example as well. There was a SMAC system, the analytics, cloud, social, mobile system, that works with the sensors and the data generated by the sensors. So remember this. So when you're working with sensors, you have to look at what is it that it is sensing, and how will it communicate to the cloud or to the analytics system in order to share the data. If you look at a typical house in United States, okay, or any of the Western countries, at you'll find about 30-40 sensors implemented, or working in their houses. There will be a temperature control mechanism, there will be a garage control mechanism, there will be a mailbox sensor, a security sensor, motion sensors, door sensors, light sensors. A lot of these sensors are already included as part of the US home, okay? So the question here is, if one home has so many sensors already implemented, installed, and each sensor is generating a lot of data every minute, imagine the number of houses that are already present in such Western countries, and how many sensors must be implemented and how much data they must be generating, okay? It is roughly said that there are about 50 billion connected devices, or 50 billion sensors in the world as of today. Now, if each sensor is generating data, you can imagine that with 50 billion sensors, how much data must be generated. And the question that then appears is, if so much data is being generated, what is happening to that data? Okay, so that's where the entire cloud analytics comes into picture. With so much data that is being generated, and we are only at the beginning of IoT. In another 5-10 years, sensors would have penetrated every application of humanity. Imagine the number of connected devices, imagine the number of data that is being generated, and therefore imagine the magnitude of cloud and analytic systems that you will have to work with. Okay, so this is what generally happens with with the connected system. The next example the next example is of a connected car. If anybody of you is already driving a car, okay, or in your family, if you own a car, you know that there are a lot of sensors that are already present in the car that we use. Okay, for example, the airbag in which is within the steering wheel. If there is an impact of the car, the airbag will open and it will save the driver from some accident or from some injury. Now, this is also an example of a sensor. So, sensors are already present in the cars and have been present in cars for a long time. But these cars are not what we can call as connected cars, because these cars are not connected to the internet. Okay. If a car was connected, it should be connected to the internet, and all the data that the sensors are generating should be stored in the cloud. And because in the cars that we use, the cars are not sending the sensor data to the cloud. Our car is not a connected car, it is just a sensor based car, and it helps us avoid accidents and so on. Okay, so this is a difference between sensors and something that we can call as connected systems. So a connected car is a car that generates data and sends it to the cloud, whereas a normal car is a car with sensors that helps the driver or the passengers from injury or any other thing. So also you must have seen, if you are using a car and you want to go reverse, okay, then there is a camera at the back and which will guide you of how you want to work with the car when you're going in the reverse gear. So that's also a sensor, but that doesn't qualify a car to be a connected car. So with Internet of Things, we have people connected to things. We are connected to our mobile devices. We are connected, to a lot of other things like our cars, and the office where we are doing our attendance. People are connected to things, and we have things connected to things. The most interesting example of things connected to things are driverless cars. Okay, driverless cars are cars where two cars are no many cars are there on the road and there is no driver. So the cars have to find their own route. And how do they do that with technology? So they are basically talking to each other, and they are talking to each other via the cloud. So how does this happen? So any driverless cars has lots of sensors. I think at least a few hundred sensors in them, and each sensor is sensing something and generating data. Okay. Now, when a sensor or when all these sensors in the car are generating data, this data is being sent to the cloud. Now, this cloud is a super cloud. Okay, let's say Google. There are Google cars, and all the cars will be sending data to the cloud. This cloud has an information of the nearby cars back from the cloud. So effectively, each car is talking to another car via the main cloud system. This is how things are going to be talking to things. As you all are aware that couple of weeks back or last week, the 5G spectrum was auctioned in India. With 5G and 6G, a lot of these applications will become a reality in many countries, possibly including India as well, where the driverless cars will be talking to each other. So who cares, so a lot of the global companies, including Cisco, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, G, almost every company, including Indian companies like TCS, Wipro, even the product companies like Ola, Uber, they are all investing in some or the other IoT project, whether it is a drive connected car, whether it is connected homes, whether it is your Alexa, whether it is your smartwatches, Fitbands, everything is an IoT device. A lot of these companies are investing a lot of money, and they see a potential. So if these companies are investing, and it's not one or two, almost every company is investing in Internet of Things. So it is very important for us to look at IoT from that perspective. Okay, we cannot neglect the importance of IoT, given the fact that billions of dollars are being invested into Internet of Things. So if these companies care for IoT, we should also care, because there are a lot of things that we can benefit from Internet of Things. I'm going to discuss with you a couple of use cases, maybe two or three, to tell you how IoT is important. Okay, take the example of ice cream cabinets. So generally, when we go and buy ice creams, okay, we pay a few rupees, and we take an ice cream cone or a stick, and we enjoy the ice cream. Now, this ice cream is sold to us by a retail shop. It was generally observed that the owners of these retail shop used to switch off their electricity at night, because when they close the shop, they also close the electricity to the ice cream cabinet. As a result of which, the ice cream used to slightly melt till morning, and in the morning, when the retailer shop owner switched on the electricity, the ice cream again started freezing. Okay, now there were two problems with respect to this phenomena. One, if ice cream melts and freezes, it's not supposed to be good for our health. So there are some issues. Plus, if you go to a retail store, and if you find that an ice cream is not in good shape, but is slightly deformed, you will not buy it. So what does the shop owner do? He returns it back to the ice cream company, and the ice cream company are bound by contract to take these ice creams up. But one thing that to keep in mind is, when the ice cream company gives the ice cream to the shop owner, there is an agreement that the shop owner will will keep the ice cream cabinet on for all 24 hours. The shopkeeper is not supposed to switch off the ice cream cabinet. But in our case, or what was observed is that the shopkeeper was actually switching off the ice cream cabinet. Now, the ice cream company found out a solution to it, and the solution was based on IoT. When we say IoT, it basically comes down to sensors. So what the ice cream company did is, they put a uh, ampere they put an ampere sensor, okay, uh, in the ice cream cabinet. So what does this sensor do is, when you switch it off, or when there is, when the ice cream cabinet is switched off, it senses that. Now, if you anybody of you has done, electric, something to do with electric, electric engineering, or electric signals, you will know that based on how a device is switched off, there is a spike that gets generated. If if there is a electric shortage from the main supply, the spike is different. If you switch it off intentionally, the spike is different. If there's anything else that happens in the unit and it loses connection, the spike is different. So what the sensors does is that it identifies the kind of spike, and it determines what happened. So now, when the retail shop owner switches off the cabinet, the spike is identified. And if this retail shop owner then tries to return the ice cream to the ice cream company, the ice cream company then refuses to take it. Why? Because according to the agreement, the retail shop owner has to keep the cabinet on for 24 hours. So, using a simple solution, the ice cream company owners saved approximately $45 million per year. Okay. Now they did one more thing. they put weight sensors in that cabinet. Now what happened because of the weight sensors is, when the ice cream started selling, the weight in the cabinet started going down. So when the sensors realized that weight is going down, they sent a message to the ice cream company. The ice cream company realized that the weight is going down, so it means ice creams are selling. The shopkeeper may need more ice creams, so they started calling the shopkeepers, and the shopkeepers, they started, making more sales. So they didn't have to wait for shopkeepers to call them, but they were actively, proactively calling the shopkeepers and asking them, are your looks like your ice creams are selling more, do you need a refill? And that's how they increase the sales. So not only they saved on the losses, but they increased the revenues of their ice creams by providing an IoT solution. So simple IoT solution creates, such a powerful business application. uh, Another application is where, uh, in United States, a tire company started offering tires as a service. Okay, now, what does that mean? So, generally, when we want to change tires in our car, we go to a tire store and we buy tires for our car or two wheelers. So, what this company did is, instead of buying, it said you can rent our tires. So when we rent our tires, every tire we pay a monthly bill based on how much we have used the tire. Okay, so it is a system where there are sensors in the tire, and what do the sensors do? They calculate how much distance the tire has traveled, and based on the distance travel, a monthly bill is generated. Now it is useful for consumers because they don't have to pay a heavy lump sum amount in the beginning. They can pay a small amount every month, so it helps them. It helps the company as well. So for the company, when they are giving tires like this, they are assured of a monthly revenue rather than some tires selling one month, then some tires not selling in another month, or waiting for seasonality to make tire sales. They now have a predictable cash flow to ensure that, they understand the business well and they are able to strategize better. So if you see, by implementing certain sensors, the entire business model of the company has changed. Instead of selling tires, they are now back to selling tires as a service. So you only pay for how many kilometers you drive when you rent the tire. So again, we come back to the question, if we are learning IoT, why should you pay attention? Because new business models are emerging. We saw that with the tires example. New emerging technologies with IoT, the number of protocols that are in practice today are large. There are different protocols for IoT devices in the home, different protocols for IoT devices, where signals are less, different protocols to use when IoT devices are used in large fields, and so on. And with the number of devices being connected and the number of data that is generated, a lot of services and applications are being written. Okay, and this is creating a huge boom in IoT careers. So anybody who's interested in IoT will find some or the other company where they can apply their skills and get their job. So basically, IoT is creating growth in the IT industry, and it all boils down to those sensors. The sensors are generating data. So what do we do with that data? We have to store it, analyze it, create insights. All these aspects are creating jobs in the IT industry. So if you look at IoT, there are three things that you need to know. Okay, one thing is you definitely need to have the software and the computer skills. Why? Because you need to work with cloud, you need to work with mobile apps, you need to work with analytics, social media. So software and computer skills are very, very important. You also need to be creative. For example, if you look at this ice cream cabinet use case, or you look at the tires as a service use case, these are creative things. So it is doing something that has not yet been done. You really have to be creative. You really have to think out of the box to come up with creative solutions. Okay, And finally, the most important skill you should have is domain knowledge. Okay. So if you're building an IoT project or an IoT solution, you should know the area for which you are building the IoT solution. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say that you want to control an AC, okay, an air conditioner using sensors. So let's say you want to implement some sensors in the air conditioner. Now, if you want to implement sensors in the air conditioner, you should know how the air conditioner works. Unless you know how the air conditioner works, whatever you do with the sensors can actually damage the air conditioner, because if you don't understand the circuit of the air conditioner, if you don't understand the working of the air conditioner, and if you're developing an sensor for the air conditioner and you insert that sensor but you are not aware of how the air conditioner works, you're inserting the sensor in the AC may actually cause the AC to short, or to go to get spoiled. So every time you do this experiment, you will be wasting a lot of money in buying the air conditioner. So if you're developing an IoT project, you really need to know how does the air conditioner work. Another example, there are lot of IoT products for pets. For example, the dogs, the cats, the birds, there are some chips that are inserted in these pets. And what these chips does is it analyzes the blood, it analyzes the heartbeats, it analyzes the vital body functions of the pets, and all this data is then sent to the cloud. Okay. Now the question is, you may be good in technology, you may be good in computers, okay, you may be creative, you have come out with a solution for a dog, but you don't know how the body of the dog works. Just imagine that you are inserting a chip in the body of the dog and you don't know how the body of the dog functions. It's going to be a disaster. Okay. So when you're working on an IoT solution, domain knowledge is very, very important. Okay. uh, So this is something that I realized way back in 2015, that when it comes to Internet of Things, the fields of computer science and electronics have merged beautifully into one of the most notable technology advances in the form of Internet of Things. What does that mean? It means that when you think of IoT, it starts with the sensors. Okay, so sensors means electronics. It is related to electronics engineering. So if you have to choose the right sensor, you should be very good at how the circuit works, what kind of the how the data flows within the sensor, and so on. But to make good use of the data that is generated by the sensor, you need to work with cloud, you need to work with analytics, mobile apps. So you need to be good in computer science as well. So with IoT, what has happened is that electronics engineering and computer engineering have come together, and only then you can have your IoT applications. Okay. So this is the last slide for the day. Okay, I'm going to explain the scenario to you, and when I open the session, I would like to hear the answers as well as I would like to hear questions on the session. Okay, let's say there are two driverless cars. There are no drivers, only cars are driving, and they are approaching each other. Okay, and they're approaching each other at a very high speed, and there is very little distance between now, and it seems that there will be a crash. How do you think, or what do you think should be an ideal solution for a situation like this where two driverless cars are approaching each other? So with this, I will say that my session comes to an end. I would like to hear your responses to this question of mine, as well as any other question that you may have. Yes, ma'am. So
Yes, sir. Sir, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So now we are posting the questions which are there from the YouTube session. Okay, from the chat box of YouTube. So you can see your chat box here, the
Yeah.
private chat over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, couple of guys, you have said ultrasonic sensor. So, what do you mean by, when you say ultrasonic sensor? What are you trying to communicate? Because I can only see that you have said ultrasonic sensor, but what do you mean by that? So, anybody knows what an ultrasonic sensor does? So, I can see that a username T coder is saying ultrasonic sensor. Can you tell me, how can ultrasonic sensor help in solving this problem?
Sir, actually, you asked something during the session, and
No,
ultrasonic
I get it.
sensor was the answer.
No, so I'm just asking to elaborate. Yes, so see, it detects the sounds and ultimately finds out the distance. Okay. Now, if you're using ultrasonic sensor and if the cars are moving at a very high speed towards each other, by the time the ultrasonic sensor cannot detect sound waves at a very large distance. Okay, the ultrasonic sensor does is it sends out sound waves, and whenever the sound waves meet a obstruction, the sound waves will come back, and based on the distance that the sound waves are sent and received, approximate distance is calculated. So there are two things why an ultrasonic sensor will not work here. One is, by the time the distance is calculated, the car will be very close to the crash. Okay, so just finding out the distance will not be enough. And the second thing is, even if you find out the distance, the crash will still happen. So ultrasonic sensor is not a very apt solution in this case. I hope that makes sense. So yes, I think a few of you are saying that ultrasonic sensor, we can get to know the object and its position. Yes, but the question here is, even if we get to know the position, can we avoid the crash? Because ideally the crash will need to be avoided. Just finding the distance is not enough in this case. Okay, so the answer here is, it will happen when we have 5G and 6G. Okay, when we have 5G and 6G, or a minimum 5G, all these cars will be talking to the cloud, which is a very powerful mechanism. And even if these two cars are approaching each other, each of the car knows the nearby cars and where their position is. So it's the software that is driving the car is aware of the relative positions of the car nearby, and so the car will be able to take a decision in the right moment of time. So one of these cars will actually change its direction while the other car is moving in the same direction. Okay, so Kunal, just to answer your question, it won't be late, because the cloud communication will not happen at the last moment. The cloud communication is happening from the time the car is starting to drive. Okay, or even when it's switched on. So the cloud is continuously communicating to each of the cars what the scenario is, and what needs to happen. So this is how the crash with driverless cars is going to be avoided, with very powerful cloud computing. So obviously sensors will be needed, and these sensors will be communicating data to the cloud, and the cloud will be helping the cars talk to each other. Okay, so I hope this example, I was able to explain the concept of sensors. Any other questions that you might have for me? Any questions?
So we just expect students to post the questions, if any.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll wait for a
Yeah.
few minutes. Let's see.
Yes, sir. Yes. Students, you all can post your questions in the chat box.
So I think
So,
Akash is
in
asking which type
yeah,
of sensor is used in Tesla. So I think that's something that only Tesla engineers can answer. But it will not be one sensor. There will be hundreds of sensors. So there is a basic difference between electric vehicle and the mechanical car that we drive. The mechanical car that we drive, there are a lot of moving parts in the car that we currently drive, whereas when it comes to the electric car that the Tesla is manufacturing, the moving parts are not as many. So a lot of these information is being gathered through the sensors, and these sensors are huge in numbers. So I would assume, that these things, these cars have a lot of sensors. And I'm not in the automotive, but I'm sure that there will be a mix of lot of the sensors, including ultrasonic sensors, impact sensors, and so on. Okay, so I'm going one by one. I can see Abbas is asking uh, connected things to things. Can you please elaborate? Okay, so when I say things to things, okay, let's go one by one. So if I miss any question, just post your question again. So when I say things to things, I'm basically saying that uh, when we get to IoT, any two things can talk to each other. Okay, now let's take the example of a car in a US home, and it is entering the garage. Now when it comes very close to the garage, the garage door will open and the car will go in. So what is actually happening is that the car is talking to the gate, the door of the garage. So it's one thing talking to another thing, and this communication is not so obviously, both are talking to each other, but it's all via the cloud. So each of these is talking via the cloud, because each of these two things has got an IP address, and once it gets an IP address, it is in a position to talk to each other. Now if you think, you can actually go beyond this, the simple thing to thing connection, and you can say that, in future you may want your table to talk to your chair. Okay, which is possible. Technologically it is possible. The only question will be is, does it make business sense to have a table talk to a chair? Okay, if there is a business sense for that to happen, it will happen. Okay, so this is what we mean by connected things to things. Two things, if they get an IP address on the internet, they are in a position to communicate to each other. Just like two mobile phones can talk to each other, the two mobile phones can talk to each other because each one of them has an IP address. Okay. Mustafa Hussein is saying, can you give any project ideas related to IoT which we can add to our resume? So I will leave the second part which we can add to our resume, because that will be something that, because I believe that if you do certain project, you will always add it to your resume. So for example, I will say that, if you're walking in the hallway of your college, or if you're going to the restroom of your college, you will notice that the electricity is continuously on, though the hallway or the toilet, or the washroom is not used 24 by 7, but the lights are always on. Can you think of something that, the lights get on only when, you enter or somebody enters? Can you think of a sensor based solution? If you can think of that, you can implement that using some technology, and you can add it to your. If you look around, in your daily lives, you will see a lot of scenarios where if you use sensors, you can make things better. Like for example, eh, um, let's say you are in a habit of forgetting things at home. So can you, create a sensor based application so that, you are reminded if you forget something? So there are multiple applications, and a lot of these project ideas are very small ideas. Okay, very simple ideas, but the impact is very high. So just to elaborate, if it is said that in a restroom or in a toilet, generally more than 50% of the electricity is wasted, because 50% of the time or more, there is nobody in the washroom, but the electricity is on. Now if you consider number of such restrooms across India, the number is really huge, and the electricity wasted through toilets and washrooms is large. Okay, so if you have an idea, you can come up with a sensor based solution, and you can help save electricity. A small simple project, but having a very large impact. Karan Gupta is saying black box concept. I'm not getting whether this is a question for me or you were commenting on something before. So if you want to elaborate on this, just elaborate with the question. Pranjal Shukla is saying ICs are used in sensors. So what I understand with the IC is integrated circuits. So actually, sensors are used in integrated circuits, and of course, sensors are also some circuitry. In so basically, sensors will need to do two things. Okay, so if I'm building a temperature sensor, I will need something to sense the temperature. Okay, and I will need something to send this data to the cloud. So this sensor should either have that communication module inside the sensor, or it should be in a position to connect with the communication module so that the data that it is generating can be sent to the cloud. So either the communication module is inside the sensor, or the sensor has a capacity to connect to a communication module. So actually your question is interchangeable. There are integrated circuits inside the sensor, but there are sensors also in an integrated circuit. uh, Kunal is saying, but at very close distance, it can useful. Sorry, I didn't get you. If you want to, robots and IoT are similar. No, so see, robots is an application. IoT is a technology. Okay, when you are using robots, there are multiple things that you're using. You're using sensors, you're using artificial intelligence, you're using machine learning, you're using analytics, you're using a lot of technologies to make a powerful robot. Okay, and IoT is one of the technologies that robots will use. Robots is an application, IoT is a technology. Akash is asking, can we make sensors? Anybody can make sensor. There are a lot of people who have sensor workshops. But if you look at the value chain in IoT, sensors is a very low margin business. So unless there is a volume, unless it's a volume business, or you have a lot of expertise in building sensors, people don't get into that business. The high margin business is creating applications using the data that is generated by sensors. So if you are good in either electronics or in computer science, you can use the data to create applications, and that's where a lot of money and money can be made, or business applications can be created. Can we combine blockchain with IoT to secure against hacking? So there are a lot of examples where blockchain is combined with IoT. For example, let's say there are a lot of medicines, okay, that need to be transported from one city to another, and these medicines have to be transported in a very specific temperature, because they have to be as close to zero as possible. Otherwise, if there is heat that is generated, uh, these medicines are spoiled. So now we are coming into blockchaining of these transportation. So what generally happens is, when medicines are packaged, okay, there are temperature sensors, and the packaged medicine is always tracking the temperature. So at every point in time, the temperature is tracked, and it is blockchain. At any point in time, whenever the temperature goes up and down below the threshold, the temperature gets blockchain. So if the temperature is not maintained by the transporters, okay, uh, the receiving party has a right to reject the delivery, and they use the data in the blockchain to justify the rejection. And because blockchain cannot be tampered with, okay, it is considered to be a legal contract. So I hope I have answered your question of and there are many such applications where IoT can be used with blockchain. Okay. um, Kunal is saying in so Osama, I think I've answered your. In the case of accident, the ultrasonic sensors are useful. See, you'll have to understand one thing. What are you trying to do in accident is you're trying to prevent the accident. But if you look at the major ultrasonic sensors, either you will need to have a very powerful ultrasonic sensor that can send sound waves in couple of meters and detect them. So the sound waves are going 2-3 meters and coming back, and you are in a position to take a decision based on that. But again, there, you are depending upon your own self to save the accident, whereas in driverless cars, that will be a very risky thing because people's life are concerned. So yes, as a concept, ultrasonic sensors are useful to avoid impact, but whether they can help avoid accident or not, especially if both the bodies are moving. So for example, the uh, when you're reversing your car, you're the only person who's moving. The wall, or the door is static. So when you are reversing and you sense with the ultrasonic sensor, you are in a position to find out the distance, so you can apply the brake. But if both the bodies are moving, then ultrasonic sensors are not that much useful. Okay. Saroji is asking, can we combine AI with IoT? So it's not a question of combining. Ultimately, what is happening with IoT is that you are having sensors. When we have sensors, we will have data. When we have data, we will do analytics. When we do when we do analytics, eventually analytics will result in machine learning. When we do a lot of machine learning, it will give rise to artificial intelligence, because machines will be in a position to determine for themselves. So the question that, can we combine, it's not actually a combine. IoT eventually will lead to AI. So if you are starting with sensors, data science will come, machine learning will come, and eventually artificial intelligence will come. That is the progression that data will make, the data that is generated from sensors will make. So data, analytics, machine learning, and AI, that's the progression. But Teslas are based on sensors. Obviously, everything will have sensors. So right now, I am not in a position to comment what sensors Tesla is using. Partly because I don't come from the automotive industry. I don't have knowledge of how Tesla is building their cars, what kind of sensors. So I don't think I'm the right person to comment. What kind of sensors are used in Tesla cars. So certificate link, I think the ma'am will answer. I'm not the right guy for certificates. Okay. Any other question? So I already answered that, where to use ultrasonic. Whenever you want to find distance between two objects, you have to use ultrasonic sensors. Thanks, Mustafa Hussain. Thanks, Pranjal. Yeah. So if you look at the official definition of a sensor, it's a transducer. Okay. It converts kinetic energy or a mechanical energy into an electric energy. And the opposite of sensors are called actuators, which convert electrical energy into kinetic or mechanical energy. So whatever you're saying, Akash, can they convert signal from analog? They are supposed to convert signals from analog into electrical energy. Thank you, everyone. Uh,
Okay, so I hope the questions are completed. All right. So thank you very much for this informative session, for introducing Smack Stack, explaining it in such detail with an ease, the implementation with a very connecting example of ice cream cabinet selling tires as services, and then the air conditioner one. And then answering to all the inquisitive questions and the queries of our participants. Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you,
Now, I
ma'am.
would like to thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to thank everyone involved in making this event a huge success. A successful event has many hands working effortlessly for months. A very big thank you to our Chief Coordinator, our Chief Education Officer, Dr. Mala Kharkar, In charge principal ma'am, Dr. Teresa Joseph, chief coordinator, Mrs. Ruchita Dalvi, and all the management members for supporting us and giving us the opportunity to conduct the event. I would also like to thank our IT coordinator, Mrs. Namrata Kavli Shinde, CS coordinator, Mrs. Manali Patil Save, our BSc IT co-coordinators, Mr. Chayan Bhattacharji and Ms. Pooja Shinde for their constant guidance and encouragement. I thank all the faculty members at the Department of Information Technology and Computer Science involved in making this event a huge success. Last but not the least, I thank to all the participants for enthusiastically participating in the program. We look forward to continued association for years to come. Before I conclude the event, I would like to give a few instructions to all the participants. The feedback link will be posted in the chat box, so please give your valuable feedback, and the e-certificates will be sent to the attendees of both the days session on the respective email IDs within 4 to 5 working days. With this, I conclude the RUSA sponsored 2 days international webinar Research in IT, Internet of Things, where innovation meets reality. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, everyone. Good day. Stay safe, stay connected, and keep learning.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Bye, sir.